Is een Geest van mij is the latest film by Amsterdam-based Peruvian-Dutch artist Mateo Vega. Currently a student at Sandberg Institute, he marks his first appearance at IFFR with the world premiere of his film. Daniel van der Velde is a co-founder of Meta Haven, the Amsterdam-based art, filmmaking and design collective whose films have been presented on several occasions at IFFR. Meta Haven's 2016 film Information Skies screened in the Amodo Tiger Short Competition in 2017.
Hi Matteo, it's great to have you. Is een Geest van mij just premiered. Tiger Shorts competition, wonderful. A very, very beautiful film as well. So I'm not going to be the most objective conversation partner that we could imagine. But I just wanted to congratulate you again on this short but very sweet achievement. And I think the film, provokes a number of questions and, maybe thoughts, both about itself as well as about how do we, position this, thinking about this film in relation to, cinema today, all those things we could try to survey in our exchange. Maybe my first question would be, having, obviously gone through the film time and time again as the maker, editor, director, writer, everything. How do you like the film yourself at the moment? Can you still bear to see it? Or do you feel like, please don't let me watch it, or anything in between really?
Yeah, actually, I just watched it, like, to kind of get in the mood of it. And I was like, I'm still, like, it was enjoyable. Like, I also have, I think since I finished it, actually to submit to IFFR, I have almost not seen it. So a bit of time always makes it nicer, I think.
Yeah, I think that's maybe good to take a certain break and then, see it again, and then maybe it will, if it's still alive, then it's, probably, it's just great to hear that it's still a relevant, very relevant piece for you as well. I wanted to ask about first of all, the story, if there is a story, because the film is, for me, mostly it's a poem. And I think, would you agree with that?
Absolutely, yeah. I think the poem also was kind of the first concrete thing that came into being, also before I knew that it was even going to be a film. So I think you're right in that.
Can you say a bit more about maybe about the particular poem in terms of like the way it was written, how it came together? Because obviously when you write a poem for a film, it's maybe different than if you write a poem just to be a poem. How do you see the relationship between those two types of poem and writing processes, and maybe some more about that?
Well, I think my basic idea for the poem was to kind of take the notion of like a ghost, there being a ghost of me out there somewhere, as this kind of metaphor for like lives I never lived, or like futures that didn't arrive, or kind of this parallel reality that is not part of my actual self. And in terms of of writing a poem for a film, I think I find it like a degree of kind of rhythm and musicality, both in editing and in the text, like quite important. So I think like a lot of my if I write a poem, it's often going to be like quite rhythmic and musical in a way. So that's like really nice to edit to, because I also really like cutting actually to the words. So that, because actually the soundtrack is quite like, it's like one kind of soundscape and there's like a few little effects, but the rhythm really comes from the text itself. So that was like an important part of it.
What do you think is the difference between a poetic script and a, let's say, narrative script? What are the main differences between those two types of script, noting that you have used a poetic one?
I think in this case, what you actually see, like the images you see and the script or the poem, they don't really refer to the same thing. So the visuals are kind of like a new layer of meaning and metaphor and interaction with the poem, that also I kind of quite intuitively like gave shape. Whereas for a fiction script, you would literally describe what you see in the image, before you even start. So it gave me like kind of a lot of freedom to visually really just like do whatever it felt right without having to stick to like movie logic or continuity or things like that. So that was really nice.
Yeah, I can imagine that it's giving freedom. I can also, see that there's a strong, there seems to be a strong personal urge or drive behind the film, meaning that if I, see it, listen to it, I feel, a voice that wants to be heard, and also the relationship with specific cities. So the fact that maybe when you are talking about the film as if it's also a collection of roads not taken, or a collection of things that potentially could have happened but didn't. But for me as a viewer, it gives me a strong feeling of being grounded in realities at the same time. I mean, I think the groundedness of the text, the fact that it refers to specific locations, is rendered into very specific languages, which are your languages, Dutch and Spanish. For me, gives it a certain type of groundedness at the same time, which prevents it from becoming poetic in the sense that it's just floating. For me, it feels like very anchored. Could you relate to that?
Yeah, and I think also like a big part of the process of writing about this ghost or these roads not taken, was also very much to like almost therapeutic in a way, to kind of also take them apart, like those idealized futures, or those frustrations, and also kind of acknowledge how actually maybe reality with its messy complexity is actually a lot more meaningful than those idealized visions.
I think that's really interesting what you're saying about reality, and the fact that reality is sort of textured and sort of tainted and like difficult, but at the same time so rich in possibility and potential, and in the sense, that that it would replace dreaming about having traveled, alternative roads that would have, potentially led to utopia or not. And but at the same time, it's not a documentary. It is something that's clearly also fictionalized in order to create a narrative like, or a poem like Er is een geest van mij. Certain things get lifted, or slightly sort of out of the kind of like everyday situation. Could you talk just a little bit more about the process? How do you place certain emphasis, where how do you work with that? Because we can say that even though it's not a documentary, but it's also not so fictional that it becomes something completely like a dream. It's somewhere in between. How do you put the emphasis so that certain things within a film are enhanced in the way that they arrive with viewers, if this is something you can speak to?
Yeah, I think for sure quite some elements you could say are documentary, in the sense that I was, without much of a plan, with whatever equipment I had at the time, capturing something, reacting to like reality around me, and also just capturing sceneries on the streets or things like this. And in terms of emphasis, Yeah, I think I would say the editing and the rhythm and like the space that I give certain things and maybe rush through others are a way to kind of create these moments or create these like dramatic intensities, but also very much looking for like realities that have like a lot of color and a lot of like kind of visual metaphorical meaning to them, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. I think that what you're saying about pacing is clearly true. Like you pace, like you go through stuff real quick, and then there's much more emphasis on other things because of that as well. So rushing through something, as you call it. Yeah, and I think that you mentioned color. I think that's something that I find interesting throughout what I know of your work, is that there's always seems to be a very big emphasis on color, and I would say in this case that it's a bit running against the spirit of its time, which, often has done this thing with, Alexa cameras where the image is super dark and almost no color left, and then you come with this, with these super vibrant colors that remind one, that are just way more sort of intense and festive. Can you speak to the importance of color and color grading in your work? Not so much the technicalities of it, but much more the artistic significance of color in what you do.
Yeah, I think it's very hard to kind of pin it down because it's often like a super intuitive and intuitive process. So I think like in general I'm not really like interested in making work that pretends to represent reality in like a direct way. So I'm always kind of looking for ways to kind of embellish or aestheticize or stylize or kind of just dramatize reality, but still that it's grounded in a kind of materialist critique. And I'm quite interested in that. Yeah, reacting to like a specific material political reality, but actually also like using all the tools to like also make it very expressive and visually crazy, and not necessarily realistic.
Yeah, also here it feels like it's like intensified, enhanced, etc., but it's still quite really based in the film image. It's not very much about the digital image or the CGI image. Do you think there's a tension between the digital reality of film and the kind of like its heritage, let's say in material or in physical material aesthetics that still determine to a large extent what we do consider cinema versus what we consider, for example, video? How do you navigate that space?
Well, I mean, there is like the CG image of me or like the 3D image of me. And also there's a mix of like digital and analog in the film. But I think like I think if I use like analog media, like I'm not really interested in kind of pretending that it's from like a more authentic time or something like this, but I kind of like to have like different kind of temporal signifiers that kind of like contradict one another, and for me that's also a bit what the present feels like this kind of vague sense of the past and vague sense of the future, and a kind of a temporal clash of times. So I guess I'm trying to kind of capture that by using these different medias.
Yeah, the other element that I thought about, seeing it next to color is texture. Both in visual and in audio, there's a room tone in the film that's already granular. It's not clean or slick. There's something granular, noisy about the room tone and about the tone in the footage. So I was gonna ask about the importance of noise in what you do.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, so there's some noise that is from actual like 60 millimeters, but it's also like digitally added noise to not film images. But for me, that's kind of a way to, yeah, to give like this kind of texture to the whole thing, but also to kind of subvert a bit the expectations of what a digital image or a analog image is, and kind of like, yeah, mess them up a bit and create this kind of weird evolving mesh of it.
Would you say that, let's say that one could say that in your work there is a certain politics are active in your work, you know, whether they're fully pronounced or fully articulated, or more politics that are relating to, you know, how something is being felt or sensed? How do you relate to that? I'm also referring a little bit to other works of you that I know. You know, works you made about, you know, squatter movement in the Netherlands, etc. Your thoughts that you often express in your work about notions of gentrification and eviction and those types of, you know, questions, and you know, and you know, political issues that also relate inherently to questions of belonging to a place or site, or with a place or site or community. And you know, your politics do not appear to be like super confrontational ones on the one hand. On the other side, they're really there. How do you look at the political, let's say, development in your work, and how it comes to an articulation or not? You know, how do you see this both here, but also maybe I'm talking a little bit about where you see yourself going in this aspect.
Mm, yeah, I think I'm definitely like reacting to political circumstances in my work a lot, also in this one. Maybe to give a bit of context. So like I kind of started shooting for this in Lima, where I was staying for a couple months, and I heard from a friend that like in the center of the city, these like monumental houses were being set on fire on purpose by the landlords in order to evict people and basically be able to like legally demolish the place. And I had been indeed researching like gentrification and urban renewal and kind of its toxic effects in Amsterdam before. So this kind of like immediately just like captivated me and touched me and made me try to bring the Amsterdam context in connection with the Peruvian context. And then there's also images that I shot in 2016 in New York and DC, I think the week after Trump got elected. So there's kind of these three political moments that I'm reacting to. I forgot about the second part of your question. Sorry.
Well, I mean, we can see that there's like political footage, or there's footage that relates to events with political, you know, echoes, connotations in the world. But I was asking about how you see yourself develop in this regard. If you have an idea about how this aspect of your work is going to evolve in future films.
Mm-hmm. I think I'm very interested in kind of creating political affect, or like kind of creating kind of unique experiences that in the end point towards a political goal or cause or situation. So for me, yeah, I think the works would be less interesting if they would be super explicit about the politics. So I'm always trying to kind of balance a kind of more emotional, effective, poetic tone to like a material political reality. And yeah, I think I'll probably keep doing that, and somewhere in between try to keep bringing those together. And but also, yeah, I really don't want to underemphasize politics, but I also don't want to lose this kind of poetic, dreamlike style. So bringing those two together is is what I find really interesting moving forward.
Yeah, clearly. I mean, and I think no one's asking you to abandon that style. Please don't. Please continue with it. I wanted to ask just a few more thingies about let's say, how long did it take to make the film in total? Let's say from first idea to let's say premiere.
I think it was in January 2019 that I had the first idea for the poem. So that's 2 years ago. So first in Peru, I made like a first version that was like in the middle of 2019, which was like a lot shorter, a lot faster than the current one. Then I think in January 2020, I made a new version with like new footage shot in Amsterdam with like new lines and the kind of edits in the poem. And then in September, like the week before the IFFR deadline, I re-recorded some parts of the voiceover and mostly like timing wise fixed a few things. So yeah, I think the hardest part was like really kind of fine-tuning the pace, or like figuring out like keeping this kind of sense of like rhythm and forward movement, but at the same time like not letting it be too overwhelming or too fast, basically. So that's, I spent a lot of time on that in like different periods.
Maybe some general question about how do you see let's say not so much the future of film. I mean, that would be too big a question, but just, knowing that we have this conversation on Zoom, we are, we need to be realistic about this. We are, going into a kind of virtual festival, or a festival that's online, which is unprecedented for Rotterdam, and for any festival, I guess. How do you feel that, how do you anticipate that film will come out of this, at the end of the pandemic? What are the, look, I've been anticipating that things will never get back to the same thing, and that, some of the changes that this inflicts on what moving images in a, and what the viewing experience is, and how films are made, and also where they are seen, and how that's monetized and created, and everything will change for good because of this. But I'm not sure where you stand on this point. And I mean, and maybe we can also end with a silver lining to this cloud.
I think for me, the whole situation, like actually for me, really kind of emphasizes how important I find it to physically come together, to have physical experiences of audio and film coming at you. And of course, that's harder, like on a small laptop screen. So in a way, I think it has made me more aware of how incomparable the experiences are, and how important it is to continue coming together and continue creating spaces to share culture and become affected by it. So actually, I hope to do more physical things after this, to be honest.